Hey guys, welcome. I'm Maddie and thank you so much for coming along to watch this video today. I'm a stay-at-home mum in Perth, Western Australia, and I've started out on a journey of renovating rundown properties so that I can learn new skills and get ahead financially. I'm really excited to share with you guys a little bit of my background story and what's coming up next, because the big news of the month or next month is that we're getting our house back. So for those of you who have been following along the journey, you know that we're finished with the first apartment renovation now and it's ready for a brand new tenant. But in today's video, what I'm going to share with you is the inside scoop, how we sold everything that we owned last year, 25 kilos in a suitcase, and moved to Indonesia right before COVID hit, and how 7 weeks later we found ourselves locked down in New Zealand and what happened from there. I sold the financial planning business that I co-founded with my business partner. I was pregnant. I had 1-year-old Archer. Tom was working fly in, fly out when we moved to Bali. And honestly, what a journey it was from there. I gave birth in my mum's basement. We spent weeks in Airbnb quarantine. We said to them, we will give you $4,000 in cash to move out of our house. They were out of lease. We were offering them money. We were trying to incentivize them, but because of the law, we weren't able to get them to leave. We didn't own a bed. We didn't own a fridge. We had nothing. And so today I'm so excited to share with you all of the details of how we went from selling everything we own to now next month moving back into the family home that Tom and I purchased when we were 20 and 21 years old, and how I'm so excited to be doing some projects before we move in, making a few little touch-up renovations, and then sharing with you guys a little bit about the next renovation that we have planned for another exciting property. So come along and let's get started. So before I go on for too much longer, I want to know in the comments below, do you guys like these longer YouTube videos? And if so, what are the things that you like? What are the things that you want me to be doing more of? And if you are enjoying this content, it does take me a bit of time to put it together and a bit of effort, and I try to do it when I don't have the kids so that I can focus and concentrate. But if you do enjoy it, could you please subscribe if you haven't already and like this video? It would be super supportive to me and the channel, and I would really appreciate it. So it's hard for me to explain to you why we're moving back into our family home if I can't first explain to you why we moved out in the first place, or why we weren't even able to move back into it, and then everything that happened in between and all of the COVID drama and setbacks. So let me take you back a little bit. When we were 20 and 21 years old, Tom and I purchased our first property south of the river here in Perth, a little 3x1 1960s ex-state home. I think it's called Homes West here in WA, and we loved it. It was so awesome after growing up renting my whole life to have something that I could call my own, and that Tom and I knew we were on the property ladder and we were basically going to be paying off our own mortgage and trying as hard as we could to get ahead. Now at that time, we didn't have resources, we didn't have renovation skills, we didn't really have much going on outside of being in our very early 20s. So a year or two later, I ended up actually contacting a friend of mine and saying, hey, we should go flatting together. I'm kind of bored of living in this house. Tom's away 2 weeks out of 3. Let's go. We decided that we would convert it into an investment property. Fast forward a few years and we're still living in Perth. Tom's still working FIFO. I had my own financial planning business that I co-founded with my business partner, but I just wasn't happy. I was finding it such a struggle to juggle being a new mum, being a new business owner, or I think we were 3 years in, 3.5 years in by that point, something like that. And it was super challenging. I felt like I wasn't being the best financial advisor that I could. I wasn't being the best mother that I could. And Tom was really struggling with it as well. The monotony of that 9 to 5 work, that working all day, coming home and all you have to do is cook dinner and do dishes and get baby down and clean up and then repeat the next day, and maybe having a day and a half to yourselves on the weekend. For us, it wasn't working. For a lot of people, it does, and so no disrespect there whatsoever, but we knew we needed a change, and we looked at so many different options. Were we going to buy a house bus? We looked into it quite seriously. The problem is Tom's 6'6", and so that was really challenging to find something that he would even be able to stand up in. We looked at tiny homes, we looked at going nomadic, we looked at moving back to New Zealand, we looked at so many different things, just trying to think what felt like it would be a good fit for us, what would be an adventure, what would align with our values, could we do in a way that we would still be getting ahead financially. So after a lot of stress, a lot of thought, sitting there each night, pen and paper, figuring out what did we want, what was important to us, we came up with a plan, or more, I came up with a plan and I convinced Tom that it was a good idea. We were going to move to Bali. The thought process was, Bali's 3 hours from Perth, 3.5 hours, something like that. Tom's fly in, fly out. It's not that much further to fly into Perth and then catch a connecting flight up to Bali. I knew our outgoings would be a lot less in Bali. I would be able to be supported a lot more in terms of having access to things like cleaners, and we had a wonderful nanny and all that sort of stuff to help me while I was busy trying to care for Archer at the same time as suffering with really, really horrible morning sickness. Tom joined us 1 week out of 3, and life was pretty good. It was exciting to be on a new adventure. We didn't know what was next. We also had thoughts of traveling throughout other areas in Southeast Asia. We love Thailand. We've been there a few times. Anyway, life was great. And then we had this plan. We were going to go for a holiday. Archer and I was pregnant. My sister lives in LA, so we thought we would stop through and see her, spend 2 weeks in New Zealand, and Tom would meet us there, and then back to Perth before jumping back to Bali. It was basically this huge, exciting, multi-leg trip. And I'd even planned a 2-day stopover in South Korea, which I'd never been to before, that I was really excited about. So Bali, South Korea, LA, New Zealand, and back to Perth. Just before we left Bali to go and visit my sister in LA, things were starting to be spoken about some kind of coronavirus or COVID or something that was going on, and things were developing every day. We had to cancel our 2-day stopover in South Korea because we weren't sure if we were going to be allowed into the United States or not, and so we thought better safe than sorry, we'll just go straight to LA. Once we got to LA, it was so awesome to see my sister, but literally every day more news was coming out, more uncertainty, and it was really, really scary. I was watching Facebook news conferences from Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, bearing in mind this was right at the start when nobody had a clue what was going on. We didn't know how it was transmitted. You couldn't even get masks in some cases, and it was all pretty scary. We went to Target, to the supermarket section to get food. Food had just run out. There was hardly anything on the shelves, and it was super scary. And my sister encouraged me, Maddie, look, you have to go home to New Zealand. You don't know what's going to happen here. You're pregnant. You don't know what kind of healthcare support you can or can't get. And so I cut my trip short in LA. I got straight back to New Zealand, and I called Thomas and I said to him, Tom, you need to come in from the mine site. You need to meet us in New Zealand. The world is going crazy. We don't know what's going on. Just come now. And initially Tom said, babe, it's fine. I'll finish out my week. I'll meet you in New Zealand. But what happened is we got off the phone. Scott Morrison announced that Australia was closing their borders. New Zealand had already announced that they were going to be doing the same. And Tom got out of the mines as fast as he could and met us in New Zealand. And a few days later, New Zealand went into nationwide level 4 lockdown for I think it was 5 weeks or something like that. And that's when we knew we were stuck in New Zealand. So things were super uncertain for our family at that time. I didn't know what I was going to do in terms of maternity care. Was I going to manage to get back to Perth next month? Everything evolved on a daily and weekly basis. We really had to go with the flow and take things as they came. Tom had to quit his job. We knew he wasn't going to be able to get back. We also knew there was a point in which I was going to be too pregnant to fly, where the airlines wouldn't let me, even if we could get back. And we had to make the decision, okay, let's stay here until we have baby. We'll make it work. We'll stay at my mum's house. We'll live in her basement, and, we'll just go along with this. And I've got to say here, guys, that we were super fortunate that we had family. We had resources. We had flexibility. As much as COVID was really difficult in terms of changing our plans, Tom having to quit his job, we lost a lot of money, all those sorts of things, and the stress and uncertainty of it, we've actually come out the other side of it. A lot of people have been hugely detrimented by this, not only health-wise, emotionally, financially, and so we are super fortunate to be in the position that we're in now. So while we were in New Zealand, we were trying to come up with a plan for how we could get back to Perth, and the rules were constantly changing depending upon when it was and what was the circumstance under which you were returning home. There were occasions where we could have got back, but we chose not to on the basis of, again, either being pregnant or not wanting to be in hotel quarantine with a baby and a 20-month-old. So while we were in New Zealand, our house here in Perth was tenanted. We had a 12-month lease agreement that we'd signed with these tenants prior to COVID even kicking off, and they were paying their rent every week and all was fine. We knew that their lease was going to be up in the new year, and so we thought it would be great. They would move out, we would be able to move back in. Even if the house sat vacant for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was, we would be able to return from New Zealand and move back into our home. What we didn't realise was that even if a tenant's lease had ended, we couldn't ask them to leave under the COVID provisions that were brought in. Even though we never agreed to have them in our home in that investment property for longer than the term of their lease, we couldn't even ask them to leave at the end of it. And I know this is a little bit controversial and different people feel different ways about it. I think it was a great measure put in place that people weren't losing a roof over their head because of COVID if they couldn't pay their bills or they'd lost their job or whatever it was. But it did feel as though it was really skewed and uneven towards landlords, and there wasn't a lot of provision for people that were in our circumstance. There was an option for you to apply to the courts to return to your home on the basis that you were going to move back into it. But as we found out in reality, that didn't really mean anything. The process was going to be super long. We were told that it was often landing in the tenant's favour anyway, and so even though their lease was up, they were able to stay on in our house. When we purchased it, it wasn't really a part of our thought process whether or not it would be a cash flow positive investment property for us. It was more a lifestyle choice, and so that really didn't come into the equation. And what a lot of people, I don't think, realised is that during the COVID period, landlords were really hurting. There wasn't a lot of help. So while we were stuck in New Zealand, we still had to make sure the mortgage was being paid on the property in Perth. The tenant's rent was not even coming close to covering the mortgage rates, insurances, property management fees. In some months, we had to put $1,000 of our own savings into the mortgage just to keep the property afloat. And the only support that we really had was an opportunity to put our mortgage on hold for 3 or 6 months, which was only going to add interest to the loan that we had to then pay in future. And so there was no support, and it was really stressful. I said to Tom, I just want to sell it. I just want it gone. And he said to me, babe, what do you always say? You have to be able to ride out the storm. Don't sell at a loss. Our property value had gone down, and Tom was reminding me that it's only a loss if you actually crystallize it and sell it. And he was feeding back to me all the advice that he had heard me give other people throughout the years. And so we held on, but it was not without financial stress and pressure. So once the rules allowed for self-quarantine in Perth, we got on an aeroplane, the first quarantine-free flight out of Auckland, the very first one, and we arrived. We went to an Airbnb all the way down in Byford where we had to stay for 2 weeks. So we were in communication with our property manager at this time, and they were in communication with the tenants regarding moving out. And we actually went back to the tenants after they said that they wanted to stay on and said, look, we have a young baby, we've got a toddler, we really need to move back in. We're going to be asking you to leave at the end of this COVID moratorium anyway, so is there any possibility that you could move out now? The property manager told them, look, when this ends in April, we're expecting 20% rent increases. If you can find something else now and lock in a lower rate of rent, that would be the best thing for you. We said to them, we will give you $4,000 in cash to move out of our house. We wanted to make sure that they were all right. With $4,000, Tom and I felt that they would be able to cover their bond at the next place, pay for their moving truck, pay for an exit clean so they didn't have to bother with that, and still have a significant amount of money left over to maybe have a few glasses of wine. We put that offer to them, we asked them to move out by a certain date, and we said if they were able to do so, we would give them that $4,000, and they came back to us and they said, no. It was so frustrating. They were out of lease. We were offering them money. We were trying to incentivize them, but because of the law, we weren't able to get them to leave unless we went through a lengthy court process that we were advised was likely not going to land in our favor anyway. And so we didn't really have much choice. We had to find a rental to live in ourselves in the meantime. We'd been hopping around Airbnbs for a few weeks, and we thought maybe we could just make it through until they have to move out. But there was also no guarantee that the government didn't extend that moratorium again like they had done from September to April. And so we just had to get a rental. We were really lucky. We managed to find something. We got in on Christmas Eve. It was very stressful. We were finding it hard to even buy a bed because there were low stock levels and things were taking ages to be shipped in from overseas or interstate. But somehow we managed to make it work, and then we signed a new lease with a new tenant for the shorter period that would line up with when our new lease was going to end. And so we knew that if we wanted to, at the end of being here, we would be able to move out and move back into our family home. I can't tell you guys how excited I am to be moving back in. There's a few drawbacks. For instance, there's no bath at the new house, and with little kids that's a part of our nightly routine. So I'm not looking forward to only having a shower, but I'm sure we'll adjust. But I am looking forward to things like having a dishwasher. This rental that we're in at the moment doesn't have a dishwasher, and my God, am I getting sick of washing dishes. So I'm super excited for that. And I'm also just really looking forward to be able to put some of my newfound renovation skills back into my own home. We've never lived in our own home since we've had children. And so to have the opportunity to make their bedrooms really cool and screw in some floating shelves or a toy net or whatever it might be is getting me really pumped up. So there's a few weeks in between getting keys back to our home and needing to move out of this rental, during which time I'm hoping to do a little bit of renovating on the house, and I'm going to make daily videos for you guys on TikTok of that. Tom's hardly home during that time. I have the kids with me. It's not close to where we're currently living, and so it's going to be a huge challenge. But I'm thinking to myself, what's going to be harder? Is it going to be doing that, or is it going to be trying to paint a house once we've moved all of our furniture into it? And so if I can get a few things done and out the way first, that will be massive. And so guys, I told you that I was going to fill you in a little bit on the next project, and what's most exciting is when we move out of this house, on the last day here where we have to give back keys is actually the same day that we get keys to our next investment property. We're still subject to finance at the moment, but I've been speaking with my broker super regularly, and it seems like all the boxes have been ticked on that front. It's another 2x1 apartment. It's in terrible condition, and I'm super excited to basically be exhausted all over again, but to be renovating now with the knowledge and skills of last time. We've paid a lot less for this investment, and I negotiated the price down significantly, so hopefully this time it is actually profitable to us. It would be really nice to have more than $1,500 in my back pocket for 3 months worth of work, but hey, it is all learning. So guys, that's it for this video today. Let me know if you have any questions, what bits you liked or didn't like. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.